My name is Tally-Foos, and right now I'm kind of living a little bit vicariously through social media in the Marianist world.
Can you tell me how you came to the Marianist family?
I came as executive director of Tecumseh, the camp and retreat center down in Mountain Home, Texas. And when I was thinking about interviewing for the position, I met with Dennis Link, who was the director. And the things he talked about, the Marianist Charism, just really fit me. It just really made total sense to me, just even that little kind of conversation. And then I was really fortunate and a lot of good timings of things, because my very first retreat that I was part of there as director was a family retreat. And Father Al McMenemy came down, and we just sat on the porch of Tecumseh and talked about the Marianist. And he explained so much, and just this one-to-one about who the Marianists are, and kind of how things kind of fit together historically to that current time in 2009. And then Charlie Johnson was on our board, Tecumseh board at that point. So he gave me all the literature and all the things to read to educate myself, and that was another good way to just kind of learn. But when I left Tecumseh, we moved up to Colorado Springs.
Talking specifically about our Spirit of Saragossa Retreat here that we offer at NACMS, I'm curious what led you to pursue that opportunity. What interested you about it?
I was at a point where kind of just living the Marianist Charism at Tecumseh, and there weren't any vowed Marianists there at Tecumseh except in the summers. And so there was a distance of 60 to 70 miles to other Marianist institutions. I don't know, I think I just kind of had a hunger for kind of the discipline of a retreat, but I hadn't done a sustained real Marianist study, because a lot of the things that were offered were in the summer, and I couldn't do, that would have been Zoom or whatever. I just couldn't do it. And so it was just a great opportunity. I mean, the minute I saw it, the minute I knew I wanted to do it. We started late 2020 or early 2021. And so we went through the pandemic together, the start of the pandemic together. So it was kind of an interesting time, in the world, and thus an interesting time to be on retreat like that.
And Susan Ferguson was your director through the retreat.
That is correct. Yeah. One of the best things that ever happened to me was meeting her. So.
And you mentioned that you two are still connected today.
We are. When the retreat ended, we were like, I don't think we're finished knowing each other, kind of thing. And so for a long time, we met weekly. Now that I'm kind of in a different context of life with being an executive director of another nonprofit, we've at least every 2 or 3 weeks, we touch base, and then we talk for an hour and a half, of course, and trying to catch up and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a lifelong friendship.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
And I'm curious if you can describe the experience of the retreat practically. What did it look like for you as you journeyed through it?
Well, in a practical sense, it gave me discipline to my spiritual practices. It had some accountability. I knew I'd be talking to Susan in a week, and that these were the things I was supposed to have thought about and written about and reflected on. And so I think for me, that kind accountability piece was good. And so kind of the bones of the retreat lead you, through the Marianist spirituality in a really succinct but deep way. And so that helped me a lot just in the days leading up to the next time that I would talk to Susan. And, not everything really hits you, but some things just, pop you, on the head. I've never thought about how the Marianist Charism plays out in the world in that way, and in my life and in my heart. So
yeah, I'm curious, is there a lasting piece that you continue to carry with you now, or some way that the content of the retreat or reflection you had impacted you that you still think about?
Honestly, the thing that I think about the most often is really early in the retreat. I think it's a reflection about Adele in the garden. And it talked about planted roses and the planted plants that were all in a structure. And then over there was that part of the wild garden, that's in the corner that isn't quite tended to as well. And that really made me think about the Texas bluebonnet, which I grew up in Texas. And the Texas bluebonnet is just a really tough little flower that grows in wild spaces. You can grow them in your garden, but they're not the same. And so it made me kind of reflect on how because I was a master naturalist in Texas, how the bluebonnet comes to be, how it comes to actually be able to be above ground. And it takes harsh weather, harsh cold weather, and then harsh wet weather, which is hard to come by in Texas sometimes, the wet part. And when you have that, all those variables come together, you'll have these fields that are just, from afar, they just look like solid blue. And so, just that metaphor for how, we have this structured life that we're leading that's kind of our Facebook life, that we're putting up that's, attractive and well-ordered. But then we all have that little corner that's tumultuous and hard and sometimes you suffer, but beauty comes out of that as well. So that, talking through that and that whole story of Adele in the garden is what created that kind of mental and emotional picture for me. And so, yeah, it was that, and I think of it often, that's the one picture that I painted in my head during that retreat, that when things are tough, I kind of think about.
I'm curious if there are ways that this experience impacted your own understanding and embodiment of the Marianist Charism.
Well, one of the things that the Marianist completely changed for me was Mary. That sounds strange, because I did grow up in treating people and managing a lot of my life as Mary did, and as Mary teaches us through the church and through her life. However, I was in South Central Texas, and so the main Mary that I knew was Our Lady of Guadalupe. And in that part of the world, sometimes as a kid, I kind of felt that people were worshiping Mary rather than Jesus, God, and the Holy Spirit, and that's, from my perspective as a child, I just never quite got it. I never quite understood. And really, it was the very first conversation with Father Al that started me on that journey of understanding the reverence of reverencing Mary, and also modeling Mary's life. And so I don't know that I would have arrived there as a Catholic if not for the Marianist. And so this retreat kind of solidified that. It just goes a lot into Mary and how all roads lead back to Mary, kind of, when you look at all the things that the Marianists do and believe in, and how we're meant to behave and all those things. And it really kind of just coalesced that for me. Even though, I'd been with the Marianists for 11 years when I did this retreat, but it just really, it gave me word. I know the vowed Marianists do it in 30 days straight, but I think the whatever it is, Susan and I were trying to remember exactly how long it took us, but it was, 5-6 months. Yeah. And something that is that sustained, it can't help but just, invite more reflection in between things. And because you're living life, you're living life the whole time. You're not really, really stepping away.
Why would you recommend this retreat to someone?
I think, especially for people that aren't day to day around lay Marianist or vowed Marianist, vowed religious, I just think it's a really good way to really solidify the connection to the Marianist. And there's a lot of us that live geographically on the outside of the Marianist world. And the times that I've spent in Dayton or St. Mary's University, you can get kind of jealous of that the people that are always in that, And so when you're kind of not in that kind of consistent exposure to lay Marianists and people that are, day to day living and talking the charism, I just think it's a really good way to seek and to find how you're going to live your life as a lay Marianist, even if you're not in constant contact with other Marianists. So yeah, I think and I mean, I'm sure people that are at UD or, in those areas that were so populated with Marianists, I'm sure it can be beneficial too. But from my experience, that's the people who live kind of outside geographically, the whole world of the Marianists. It's a great way to connect and to kind of embed the whole charism over 6 months to kind of carry you forward.